the biggest mistake, you know, God always was mad at the devil for creating the Nephilim. So, but even in God's attempts to destroy the Nephilim seed, it seems like they managed to always somehow survive. So they survived the flood. You had Goliath. Nimrod was a Nephilim too. And a lot of the current, the secret is that the current Nephilim bloodline goes back to Nimrod after the flood. That's why there's so many of the Nephilim bloodline. It's because they come from Osiris, the one who was cut up into many pieces. Nimrod. So the Canaanites are Nephilim too. They're related to Nimrod. But the actual the Huns, actually Nimrod had direct, sons and descendants who were actually direct Nephilim descendants. So it's likely that all these Nephilim bloodlines come directly from Nimrod himself. And they mixed the Canaanites, who were already part Nephilim themselves. So like all the Nephilim seed comes through Ham, pretty much. Nimrod is kind of, he's like Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. He's like the godfather of the Nephilim after the flood, pretty much. So maybe Nimrod was the ancestor of Goliath. That could have been. Maybe Satan just created Nimrod and made him a Nephilim, and then used Nimrod to spread the Nephilim seed after the flood. But you had all these Nephilim civilizations. You had the Carthaginians, the Tartarian, the Huns / the Huns. The Atlanteans before the flood were a Nephilim civilization. The Mayans were probably a Nephilim civilization. There were Nephilim in the Americas, Nephilim Native American tribes. Maybe they, that could have came from the Middle East, maybe, that were colonists, like from the Carthaginian, the Phoenicians. The Tartarians were a Nephilim civilization. They could have brought their Nephilim seed with them to the Americas. So it's pretty much, you got the wheat and the tares. You got Goliath up against David, You got the bully up against, you got the bully, big old giant bully, that wants to like squash on it. They think they're giants and they want to like tread on us and rule over us. They think that's where the master race comes from. The idea of the Aryan master race comes from. It's because the Aryan Tartarians were Nephilim, or part Nephilim. So that's where probably where Hitler got his idea of this Aryan master race idea from. It really doesn't make any sense, because the Nephilim are the corrupted seed, so how can you be the master race? You're the corrupted seed, so. Like I said, Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Impaler was part of this Nephilim Hunnic bloodline, because the Huns settled in Romania, Well, actually, I think they may be from Romania. Maybe it's the other way around. But anyways, they either settled in Romania or this bloodline is from the Transylvania bloodline. So, but it's said that the Huns settled in Romania, and it's likely that Vlad Dracula was related to Attila the Hun. That's why he was such a savage and just impaled those. It's funny because he impaled the Turks, you know. But yeah, Goliath, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Dracula, the Impaler. They were probably all part of the Nephilim bloodline and were probably big, giant, big men, Um, um, it's just interesting. So I've just been doing a lot of research on it just to find something else to talk about it. Talk about, There's just a lot of unanswered questions. Um, I mean, the knowledge itself really is just for the sake of knowing. It's not really, you know, it's really just to show how our overlords try to cover up stuff. I mean, it doesn't really actually benefit you practically or anything, but it helps you to realize how we've been lied to by these parasites, Nephilim seed. So yeah, it's most likely they come from directly descended from Nimrod, since he's pretty much the main deity of the Freemasons after Lucifer, um, Osiris. So it's likely that these Egyptian pharaohs of the Mizraimites claim descent from Nimrod, the pharaonics. They think they were probably like maybe Nephilim. Claim this like because it's from the Hamitic line. The Nephilims come from the Hamitic line, so it's the Hamitic line of the Nephilim. The Hamites are the ones that control the world. So I guess the Egyptians were probably mixed with the Nephilim, or the pharaohs came from the Nephilim line. Like I said, the Huns, the Tartars, the Tartarian Aryans came from the Nephilim line. The Canaanites. Those are the main ones. What else? I mean, I've just seen big people before that just didn't look human, like really tall people, like giants. I've seen that. I'm like, they must have the Nephilim seed in them, like giantism. It can't be normal. It has to be demonic. Like Andre the Giant. Like I was thinking maybe he's from the Nephilim seed line. And these are actually the pure Nephilim giants, the ones that have the giantism. They have more of the actual DNA. Or like the great Kali, wrestlers. They put it in your face to show you. They put these big men in your face to show you the Nephilim seed. So yeah, you have these disorders like giantism and stuff. You're like, these people aren't human. Their skulls are massive. Everything about them is way bigger than us. So they can't be. There's something non-human about them. It's not. It's the genetic mutation because it comes from the genetic mutation of the Nephilim. So that's probably why we have giants, actual giants, you know. But they weren't near as big as the actual real Nephilim from the ancient times, but they're still pretty damn big. Uh, and apparently, Eustace Mullins, he said that in his book, The Curse of Canaan, that it was Shem, son of Noah, that killed Nimrod / Osiris, and that's why the Nephilim bloodline hates Shemites and Jews so much, or Israelites, or one of the main reasons. Because the Shemites didn't have any of the Nephilim bloodline in them, because it came from the Hamites. But the Nephilim bloodline of the Huns, Tartarians, mixed with the Caucasians of Japheth, and also mixed with some of the Shemites too, probably. But originally, the Shemites and Japheth were pure uh, bloodlines. They were not had any mixture with the Nephilim. And then, like in Norse mythology, you have like the myths of the frost giants, of the Niflheim, which sounds just like Nephilim, who were created by Odin. Just another name for the Nephilim. They're frost giants. Um, Also, it mentions in the Bible that the Israelites were afraid of the Canaanites because they were very like big, like they were very strong, like tall, like scary. So they must have had been Nephilim or mixed very heavily with the Nephilim. Um, but you see, God's the one who subdues the Nephilim. He destroyed the Tartarians, destroyed the Canaanites. Not all the Canaanites were destroyed, but he destroyed a lot of them. Um, and why did you know? I think does God have an active role in history, or does God let history just play out and take a passive role? I like to think God has an active role, that He waits until a civilization, He will judge a civilization. So I think He had an active role, and maybe the destruction of the Roman Empire, because maybe the Romans were wicked, but He allowed the Romans to destroy the Carthaginians, because the Carthaginians were probably more wicked than the Romans. But none of these civilizations lasted. The Alexandrian Empire of Greek Macedonia didn't last very long. Carthaginians didn't last long. The Sumerians didn't really last long. I mean, every dog has its day, and every civilization has its, every sun, has its, has its time to set. Every sun has its sunset. So some civilizations fizzle out quicker than others because maybe they're more wicked than some civilizations. But I mean, America hasn't existed near as long as these other civilizations, and we barely managed to keep it together. Because, if you ask me, America's probably more wicked than Sodom and Gomorrah combined. And, Babylon. Because America is all smoke and mirrors, it's pretending to be a peaceful country when it's really a country full of hatred and evil. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna go on the limb and say there's another bloodline besides the Hunnic, Tartarians and the Canaanites. It's also the Egyptians too. That probably the pharaohs were claimed descent from Nimrod or Osiris, and that some of this Egyptian seed is also mixed in with the current powers that be. So it's probably the other, one of the other main bloodlines is the Egyptian bloodline. Um, so you have the Egyptians, the Phoenicians. You got the Huns, and I guess they probably mixed in some of the Greeks too. So the Greeks were kind of like a hybrid civilization. They were not. I don't think the Greeks were really a pure race because they were just very mixed. Same thing with the Italians. Like the original Italians were the Indo-European, Scythians that came to Europe, settled all the countries. The Aryans, they were the Etruscans. But then they mixed in with the peoples from the North Africa, like the Phoenicians, that came to Italy, and it became a mixed ethnicity. The Italians did. They're also mixed in with the Goths, the German Goths, Visigoths. So the Italians are kind of mixed. They're very mixed. But they're probably more mixed now than they were back in the day. So yeah, you got the Sumerians or the Tartarian bloodline, Hunnic bloodline. You got the Egyptian bloodline, and you got the Canaanite bloodline. And then you have the evil. You have the Edomite bloodline. Even though the Edomites were related to the Israelites by blood, they still could have mixed in with the Nephilim bloodline, the other Nephilim bloodlines. So it would make sense why Freemasonry is so obsessed with the Egyptians, because the Mizraimites would have had to been mixed in, would have been descended from Nimrod. The kingship would have had been descended from the original king, King Nimrod. So, and also the priesthood of Egypt was descended from the Sumerian Babylonians. Priesthood of Babylon, who were the original Freemasons who came from Nimrod. But not all the pharaohs. I don't think all the pharaohs of Egypt were actually Nephilim descended. So, there were probably some pharaohs that were not of the bloodline. And, there are always some outliers. So you got the Canaanites, the Egyptians, Canaanites / Phoenicians. You got the Edomites, and then you got the Kurgans, the Aryan Scythians, the Huns, the other the Gog and Magog bloodline. And then you probably have some Nephilim bloodlines that came to the Americas native people bloodlines. I don't know. I think I've pretty much beat the topic to death. Pretty much. Not really much else to talk about. I mean, but they all the kings of this world pretty much like to think that they come from King Nimrod or Osiris, and that's who they worship. Uh, so yeah, some researchers will only mention like one bloodline, say it's all of them, But my research is trying to involved in trying to piece together all the bloodlines into one picture to present them as the multiple strands of the bloodlines, but show how they all relate to each other instead of just saying they all come from the Pharaohs or they all come from the Canaanites or they all come from the Khazarians or whatever. So my research is trying to make it more complex where it shows that all these bloodlines are different but similar and all have a relation to